Sorting through collections of Danish records, David Knight finds a plausible scenario. According to an 18th century report, the Cinnamon Bay compound was attacked and torched by the rebels, not the colonists. But why would the rebels destroy a house that they themselves could occupy? The answer reveals a new shade to what once seemed a black against white revolution. Not all the slaves are buying into the rebel program, including the crew at Cinnamon Bay. As St. John's slave revolt intensifies, some colonists are warned of rebel attacks by their own slaves.
There very well may have been many slaves on St. John who were enslaved themselves by the Akwamu, and that in itself may have prevented them from wanting to support the Akwamu in this rebellion.
Some colonists escaped to a deserted island, assisted by their field hands. Many slaves actually stay behind to defend the plantations. Their motive? Most likely a combination of loyalty and practical self-interest.
They did have an investment, they did have a stake, they did have some kind of sense that this was their land, their house. In fact, even perhaps personal relationships with the managers and owners.
In fact, ongoing research reveals that St. John's slave revolt was waged by a relatively small group of determined individuals.
Of the 1,200 enslaved laborers that were on St. John, we only have implicated around 120, 140 individuals. We're talking about 10% of the slave population on the island at the time.
Loyal slaves must ultimately run for their lives as rebel attacks intensify.
At the time of the rebellion, this group of people chose not to join the rebellion. They resisted the rebellion, and ultimately their house was burned.
After looting the house of food, the rebels burn it to the ground, a scene repeated across the island, according to this account.
This resistance is a major setback for the rebels. They have no choice but to fight the other slaves and cripple them by setting their plantations aflame.
Africans against Europeans, slaves against rebels, and soon another irony. News of the revolt finally reaches the governor's office on the nearby island of St. Thomas. The lone survivor of St. John's garrison reports the fort has been wiped out. With only a handful of Danish troops to spare, Gardelin beefs up their ranks with a group of specialists. For them, the color of your skin comes in a poor second to the color of your money.
They served as a first line of defense for the government, and they were rewarded with property, confiscated plantations.
Called the Free Negro Corps, they consist of freed slaves. Soon, they sail for St. John. Their mission, to hunt down the African rebels. On St. John, the Akwamu rebels mass their forces for their biggest assault on the planters yet.
We can see that the colonists feel powerless